The landscaper maintains the veterans' yard for free every week, not knowing neighbors were organizing something that would change both their lives forever. The gentle hum of the lawnmower filled the crisp autumn air as Mike Sullivan guided it across the fading grass of Mr. Jenkins' front yard. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool breeze that rustled the flame-colored leaves above. This was the 8th consecutive Thursday he'd shown up, unannounced and uninvited, to tend to the neglected property. From behind partially drawn curtains, Samuel Jenkins watched the young man work. His weathered hands, marked with age spots and the remnants of battles long past, trembled slightly as they clutched the edge of the window frame. The 73-year-old Vietnam veteran hadn't stepped foot outside his modest home in nearly 3 months. Not since Martha had passed. Mike shut off the mower and paused to wipe his brow with the back of his hand. He glanced up at the small ranch-style house, its white paint peeling in places, the American flag hanging limply from a pole mounted beside the front door. For a brief moment, he thought he caught a flicker of movement behind the living room window, but it disappeared so quickly he couldn't be sure. 3 houses down, Eleanor Simmons peeked through her blinds at the familiar scene unfolding on her street. She reached for her phone and quickly typed a message to the neighborhood group chat. "He's here again. Same time as last week." Inside his darkened living room, Samuel slowly lowered himself into the recliner that still held the indentation of Martha's small frame. 47 years of marriage gone in a hospital room that smelled of antiseptic and finality. The silence in the house had become a physical presence, pressing down on his chest until some days he could barely breathe. The lawnmower's roar started up again, vibrating through the walls. Samuel closed his eyes, allowing the mechanical rhythm to temporarily drown out the deafening quiet that had become his constant companion. Mike moved methodically across the backyard now, pushing the mower in straight, even lines. He'd never met the old man who lived here. Had only glimpsed him once, months ago, shuffling to a car driven by a silver-haired woman he assumed was the man's wife. Something about the veteran's stooped shoulders and the careful way the woman had helped him into the passenger seat had stayed with Mike. 2 weeks later, he'd driven past the house and noticed the lawn beginning to grow wild. The following week, it was even worse. By the 4th week, with no sign of care, and the neighborhood association likely getting ready to issue a citation, Mike had made a decision. He'd pulled his truck to the curb, unloaded his equipment, and set to work. In the months since, it had become his Thursday ritual. Finish his regular clients by 3, drive to the veteran's house, and spend 90 minutes making sure the property looked cared for. He never knocked on the door, never left a bill, never expected acknowledgement. "You don't even know if he's still alive in there," his girlfriend Alyssa had said last week. "Maybe he moved to a retirement home. Maybe the house is empty." But Mike had seen the lights change from room to room in the evenings. Had noticed the occasional grocery delivery service van in the driveway. Someone was in there, living a life hidden from view, and for reasons Mike couldn't fully articulate, maintaining this small connection felt important. Eleanor Simmons hung up her phone and smiled, satisfied. 23 neighbors had confirmed their participation in what had started as her impulsive idea, but had quickly grown into something much bigger. She glanced at the calendar on her refrigerator, where next Saturday's date was circled in red marker, and felt a flutter of anticipation in her chest. Samuel Jenkins dozed fitfully in his recliner, drifting between memories and present reality. In his dreams, Martha was always there, her laugh like wind chimes on a summer evening. In his waking moments, the absence of that sound was a wound that refused to heal. The sudden silence when the mower stopped pulled him reluctantly back to consciousness. Through the window, he could see the young man loading equipment into a battered pickup truck with Sullivan Landscaping stenciled on the side. A strange tightness gripped Samuel's throat. He should go out there. He should say thank you. He should at least acknowledge the kindness of this stranger. His hand moved to the walker positioned beside his chair, but the familiar weight of grief and isolation held him in place. By the time he had mustered the courage to stand, the truck's taillights were disappearing down the street. "Next week?" Samuel whispered to the empty room. "I'll thank him next week." Mike drove home with the windows down, the cool air clearing the scent of fresh-cut grass from his nostrils. He couldn't explain to Alyssa or anyone else why he kept returning to that house. It wasn't charity exactly. It was something more primal, more necessary. His father had been a Marine, had come home from Desert Storm with a body intact but a spirit fractured. Mike had been too young to understand then why his once jovial dad would sit silently for hours, staring at nothing. Now at 34, with his father 5 years in the grave, Mike understood something about the weight veterans carried. The flag on Mr. Jenkins' house told a story Mike couldn't read completely, but felt compelled to honor in the only way he knew how. His phone buzzed with a text from Alyssa. "Did you finish with the mystery house? Dinner at 7? Mike smiled. "On my way home. Need anything from the store?" As the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across suburban lawns, a network of messages flowed between neighbors who had previously exchanged little more than polite waves. Eleanor Simmons had created something unexpected, a community forming around an act of kindness that most of them had observed, but none had participated in until now. The next Thursday dawned gray and threatening rain. Mike checked the weather radar repeatedly throughout the morning, hoping the approaching storm would hold off long enough for him to complete his regular route and still make it to Mr. Jenkins' house. By 3 o'clock, the first fat raindrops were beginning to fall. Mike hurried through his final client's property, then pointed his truck toward the now familiar street. The rain was falling steadily as he pulled to the curb and sat, engine idling, considering his options. Inside his house, Samuel Jenkins had been watching the sky darken since noon. A peculiar anxiety had taken hold of him as the storm approached. Not fear of the weather, but a growing concern that his Thursday visitor might not appear. The realization of how much he had come to depend on this stranger's presence disturbed him. When the green truck appeared at the curb, Samuel felt a rush of relief so intense it left him lightheaded. He watched as the young man sat in the vehicle, clearly debating whether to brave the elements. Before he could think better of it, Samuel reached for his walker and began the slow journey to the front door. Mike was just about to put the truck in drive when movement at the house caught his eye. The front door opened, revealing an elderly man gripping a walker. He stood beneath the small overhang of the porch, partially protected from the rain, looking directly at Mike's truck. For a moment, neither man moved. Then, as if pulled by an invisible force, Mike turned off the ignition and stepped out into the rain. Water immediately began soaking through his work shirt as he approached the house. "Sir," Mike called as he neared the porch, "you don't need to worry about the yard today. I'll come back when the weather clears." Samuel's voice, when it finally emerged, was rougher than he expected, rusty from disuse. "You're getting soaked, son. Come inside." The interior of the Jenkins home smelled of coffee and something else, a lingering scent of floral perfume that seemed out of place in the bachelor residence. Mike stood awkwardly just inside the door, rainwater dripping onto the entryway tile. "I'm Mike Sullivan," he said, extending a hand that he quickly wiped on his jeans first. "Samuel Jenkins." The older man replied, his grip surprisingly firm. "But everyone calls me Sam." "It's good to finally meet you, Mr. Jenkins." "Sam?" the veteran corrected. "And I should be the one saying that. You've been taking care of my yard for months now. Never gave me a chance to thank you." Mike shrugged, suddenly self-conscious. "It was no trouble. It was kindness," Sam said simply. "And it's been in short supply in my life lately." He gestured toward the kitchen. "Coffee's fresh if you'd like some." While Mike sipped from a mug that read, "World's Best Grandpa," Sam explained about Martha, his wife of nearly 5 decades, taken by a swift and merciless cancer just 4 months earlier. He spoke haltingly at first, then with increasing fluency, as if the dam that had held back his words had finally cracked. "The chemo took her hair," Sam said, staring into his own coffee. "But not her smile. Never that. She was still smiling the day she died." His voice caught. "Told me to remember how to do it too. But I seem to have forgotten." Mike listened, offering nothing but his attention. It was enough. By the time the rain stopped and weak sunlight filtered through the windows, Sam had shared more with this stranger than he had with anyone since Martha's passing. "Your father was a Marine?" Sam asked, noticing the small Corse emblem on Mike's keychain when he set it on the table. "Yes, sir. Master Sergeant Thomas Sullivan. Desert Storm and Operation Iraqi Freedom." "Is he still with us?" Mike shook his head. "Heart attack 5 years ago. Too many cigarettes and too much stored-up stress," the doctor said. Sam nodded in understanding. "The things we bring back don't always show on the outside. That's what my mom used to say." Mike glanced at his watch. "I should get going. Alyssa, my girlfriend, will be wondering where I am." "Of course." Sam seemed to deflate slightly. "But perhaps, if the weather's better next Thursday." "During. I'll be here," Mike said, certainty in his voice. "Yard first, then coffee after?" The smile that crossed Sam's face didn't quite reach his eyes, but it was a start. "I'd like that." As Mike drove away, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders, a tension he hadn't realized he'd been carrying. He called Alyssa. "I finally met him," he said when she answered. "The veteran. His name is Sam." Eleanor Simmons watched Mike's truck pull away from Sam's house and immediately reached for her phone. This new development would need to be incorporated into their plans. The following Thursday established a pattern that would carry them through the next month. Mike would arrive, maintain the yard, then join Sam inside for coffee and conversation. Slowly, Sam began sharing stories of Vietnam, of coming home to protests and silence, of building a life with Martha despite the nightmares that plagued him for decades. Mike spoke of his father's struggles, of growing up with a hero who couldn't always be present even when he was in the room. He talked about his landscaping business, started with a single mower and a dream after college hadn't worked out. Martha would have liked you, Sam said one afternoon in late October. She always saw the good in people right away. Took me longer, usually. What made you finally come to the door that rainy day? Mike asked, a question that had lingered in his mind. Sam was quiet for a long moment. I realized I was waiting for Thursdays, he finally said. They were the only days that felt different from all the others. And I thought, if this young man can show up every week for a stranger, maybe I could find the courage to say thank you. The evening before the date circled on Eleanor's calendar, Mike received a strange phone call. Mike Sullivan? This is Eleanor Simmons. I live down the street from Sam Jenkins. Mike frowned. Is Sam okay? Oh, he's fine, Eleanor assured him. But I'm calling about tomorrow. We need your help with something important. The next morning dawned clear and cold, the first true autumn day of the season. Mike arrived at Sam's house earlier than usual. His stomach knotted with nervous anticipation. You're early, Sam said, opening the door before Mike could knock. I thought maybe we could go for a drive today. There's something I'd like to show you. Suspicion flickered across Sam's face. What kind of something? It's a surprise, Mike said, then added more gently. Trust me? The question hung between them, heavier than its simple words suggested. Finally, Sam nodded. Let me get my jacket. The drive took less than 10 minutes. As they rounded the corner onto Main Street, Sam's breath caught audibly. The entire town square had been transformed. Red, white, and blue bunting hung from lampposts. A banner stretched between buildings read, "Thank you for your service." And people, dozens of them, stood waiting. As Mike helped Sam from the truck, Eleanor Simmons approached, a broad smile on her face. Mr. Jenkins, she said warmly, we've been wanting to do this for a long time. What followed was unlike anything Sam had experienced since returning from Vietnam half a century earlier. One by one, neighbors introduced themselves, people who had lived on his street for years but whom he'd never really known. Each carried something, a dish of food, a handwritten card, a small gift. We've watched Mike coming to your house every week, Eleanor explained as Sam stood bewildered in the midst of the gathering. It reminded many of us how little we've done for our veterans, for our neighbors. So we organized this. This turned out to be not just a thank you celebration, but the unveiling of a new Veterans Memorial in the town square, with Sam asked to perform the ribbon cutting. As he stood before the crowd, scissors in his trembling hand, he caught Mike's eye in the audience. I don't have words, Sam began, his voice quavering. For decades after I came home, I felt invisible. Then my Martha made sure I never felt that way again. His voice broke. When she left, the invisibility returned. But then this young man, he gestured to Mike. This young man saw me when I couldn't even see myself. There wasn't a dry eye in the crowd as Sam cut the ribbon. Afterward, as people mingled and shared food from a community potluck, Sam pulled Mike aside. Did you know about this? Mike shook his head. Not until yesterday. Eleanor called me, asked me to get you here. I had no idea they'd been planning this for weeks. Sam looked around at the gathering, at faces now becoming familiar. All this time, I thought I was alone. That's the thing about grief, Mike said quietly. It convinces you you're alone even when you're surrounded by people who care. Sam nodded, a real smile spreading across his face for the first time since Martha's passing. Your father would be proud of you, son. Mike blinked back unexpected tears. I think Martha would say you remembered how to smile after all. As autumn deepened into winter, the relationship between Mike and Sam evolved. Coffee after yard work became dinner once a week, often with Alyssa joining them. Sam began venturing out more, to the grocery store, to the Veterans Hall, even to the occasional neighborhood gathering that Eleanor made sure to invite him to. For Christmas, the neighborhood collectively gifted Sam with a complete exterior holiday lighting package, professionally installed. Mike arrived to find his usual yard work preempted by a team of workers stringing lights along the roofline. Seems I'm being replaced, he joked as Sam welcomed him inside. Never, Sam said firmly. These people are doing a wonderful thing, but you were the first person to see me when I was invisible. That doesn't get replaced. By spring, when the grass began needing regular attention again, A remarkable transformation had occurred. Sam, with Eleanor's persistent encouragement, had become something of an unofficial neighborhood historian, sharing stories of the town's development with younger residents. 3 veterans from the VFW Hall had become regular visitors to his home, their shared experiences creating a bond that required no explanation. And Mike, whose small landscaping business had operated on a shoestring budget for years, found himself with an influx of new clients, neighbors who had witnessed his quiet act of kindness and wanted to support him in return. On a warm Thursday in May, exactly 1 year after Mike had first stopped to mow Sam's overgrown lawn, he arrived to find Sam outside waiting for him, a small box in his hands. "What's this?" Mike asked, climbing down from his truck. "Open it," Sam urged. Inside the box lay a Silver Star medal in a velvet case. "Sam, I can't. This is yours." "It was," Sam corrected. Martha always said bravery isn't just what happens in war. It's what happens when no one is watching and you do the right thing anyway. He closed Mike's fingers around the box. "You showed that kind of bravery, son, and you saved my life as surely as any combat medic ever did." That evening, as the sun set over a neighborhood forever changed by one man's simple act of kindness, Sam Jenkins sat on his front porch and watched fireflies begin to rise from the perfectly maintained lawn. For the first time since Martha's passing, the silence around him felt not empty, but peaceful. 3 houses down, Eleanor Simmons smiled as she watched the elderly veteran through her window. Her phone buzzed with another message from the neighborhood group chat, now a lively forum for everything from meal trains for new mothers to ride shares for elderly residents. And across town, Mike Sullivan hung the Silver Star medal on his office wall, directly beneath a photograph taken at the Veterans Memorial dedication. Sam cutting the ribbon, Mike standing proudly beside him, 2 men connected not by blood, but by something equally powerful. The landscaper maintains the Veterans Yard for free every week. Not knowing neighbors were organizing. Alyssa read from the local newspaper article framed alongside the medal. Turns out they were organizing something beautiful. Mike smiled, remembering the frightened, isolated man he'd first glimpsed through a window, and the vibrant community member Sam had become. "Sometimes," he said quietly, "the greatest gift we can give someone is to simply see them when they feel invisible." Outside, spring rain began to fall gently, nourishing lawns throughout the town. Physical spaces that had become, in their maintenance and care, symbolic of the connections that sustained them all.